Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Pooja Walia Man from SGI Samalkha. Today we are going to talk on the module Customer Complaint Handling System from the paper Services Marketing. In this module, the various learning objectives are: firstly, meaning of customer complaint; secondly, importance of complaint handling, especially in services; thirdly, procedure of complaint handling; and finally, the ways of handling complaints in services. To begin with, let us first understand what is a customer complaint. And here we are specially referring to services. A consumer complaint is an expression of dissatisfaction or displeasure with the performance of any product or a service as promised by the seller. Services are intangible in nature. So, for a consumer, there is no standard yard of measurement to evaluate the service performance. The only way a consumer feels satisfied is his own expectations from the service and then its comparison with his own perception of the service performance. In case of any discrepancy in the expectations and the perception, either the expectations are high or perception is less, the consumer will be dissatisfied. Generally, the consumer could be dissatisfied if he is not delivered a service quality which was promised at the time of service sale. The reasons for a poor service quality could be due to the lack of trained service staff or maybe due to some technical fault. The dissatisfaction could be the result of ill-managed, or you can say a poorly planned service delivery procedures. The support system or the infrastructural support also plays a very important role in the service performance. Any discrepancy in the working of the above dimensions of service quality may lead to dissatisfaction of the consumer, resulting in a complaining behavior of a consumer. Imagine a situation where you have been handed over a bill of rupees 5,000 for your mobile phone. On an average, your monthly bill till then had been not more than rupees 1,000 since last 5 years. What would be your reaction? Would you like to shout and scream? Would you like to instantly scold the executive of the telecom service provider? Would you like to visit the nearest office of the service provider and personally see the executive and get the bill corrected? All this while, you must have also rehearsed the dialogues you would shell out at the organization for such a disaster in the bill computation. Do you think the service provider has also rehearsed the answers to be given to you? That too, more than the number of times you are practicing. This system of handling angry and complaining consumers like you are a routine that a service manager would expect all his executives to be trained in. Yes, we are talking about customer complaint handling system. Generally, a dissatisfied consumer will show a number of patterns of behavior. The first of such a behavior is a silent consumer. This is the most commonly displayed behavior of a dissatisfied consumer, wherein such a consumer would like to keep quiet, but decide not to buy the same service again. Now, we come to a second complaining consumer, a loud consumer. He is loud because he is complaining. He is loud because he may also resist others from buying the same brand in future. And of course, he himself also does not buy the same brand in future. The third is a redressal seeking consumer. Redressal here refers to some compensation in the form of a solution. It is when the disgruntled consumer approaches the customer service desk of the service provider and seeks a redressal to his complaint. And then there is another redressal seeking consumer, but he is a legal redressal seeking consumer. This is the last behavior which is reflected by a dissatisfied consumer who actually approaches the legal machinery of the land to seek a redressal for his grievance. Having discussed these dissatisfaction showing behaviors, do we realize that it is actually important to handle a complaint? Yes, it is important to respond to the complaints made by the consumers. It is true that sometimes false complaints may come up. Many a times, the reason for the complaint may be an uncontrollable factor. Yet, it is in the benefit of the service organization not only to quickly respond to such a situation, but also to ensure that this reason for a complaint does not occur again in future. While a dissatisfied consumer may have already developed a negative attitude about the service provider, his attitude may be changed by handling the complaint intelligently, smartly, and remember, quickly. In fact, sometimes a well-handled complaint may rather make the consumer more satisfied. Now, let us look at some of the reasons for having a well-laid complaint handling procedure, particularly in a service organization. Now, let us look at some of the reasons for having a well-laid complaint handling procedure in service organization. The first is to lead by example. If an organization can develop and implement a quick and responsive complaint handling procedure, it can help overcome the formation of a negative image due to any error in the service delivery. Such a system is often attributed to only forward-looking organizations with smart managers, which may lead in the industry by setting high service standards. Another reason is to minimize the causes of complaints. Having a well-laid consumer complaint handling procedure means not only rectifying the consumer complaint, but also learning from such complaints in improving the services by eliminating any reasons for complaints in future. Thus, for enhancing the quality of services by reducing the reasons for complaints, a formal complaint handling system is very useful. Positive brand image is another important reason to have a formal complaint handling mechanism in any service organization. Every service organization would like to create a positive brand image for itself based on the services it offers to the consumers and the experiences it creates for them. Having a complaint handling procedure facilitates the organization in identifying the causes of discrepancy in delivering high quality services to its consumers. One more reason of having a well laid down complaint handling procedure is to upgrade the technical snags. Often, the reasons of complaints in a service delivery could be due to some technical snags and not necessarily due to any shortage in the service delivery. If the same had been overlooked in the past due to any reasons, the complaints may be a means to identify such snags and then fix the same. For example, a hotel room may have a problem of water heater not working properly. Such an improvement in services is often brought to the notice of the service providers through consumer complaints. It is important to understand that the cost of attracting a new customer is as high as 5 times the cost of retaining an existing consumer. Hence, the service organization should ensure that it treats a complaining consumer at high priority with the aim of retaining them. No service organization would like to hear a complaint in its service delivery or in the support system. However, complaints should be seen as opportunities for improvement in the service production and service delivery. Moreover, complaints also offer a chance to the service provider to win over a consumer and also expect a positive word of mouth from him about the consumer values by taking their concerns seriously and managing their grievances up to their satisfaction. Thus, it is important for all service organizations to have a standard customer complaint handling procedure. Now, let us look at the procedure in a formal manner. The first step in developing the customer complaint handling procedure is to have an organizational plan for complaints receiving. There should be a well thought, clear, and open organizational plan for receiving customer complaints. The customer should feel encouraged to share a grievance directly with the organization rather than keeping it to himself and complaining to potential consumers of the service provider. The organization should look at a complaint from a positive angle, that the consumer is spending his precious time in co-creating and improving the services of the firm. The next step is to identify the sources of complaint receipt. The organization should make itself approachable from a number of channels for receiving a complaint. For example, the consumer should be able to reach to the concerned desk for registering his complaint in the service consumption, either in person, through mails, through emails, or through phone or text messages. This gives a positive impression about the service firm in being positive and welcoming to acknowledging and receiving complaints, and thus aiming to improve the service performance of the organization. We move ahead to the next step in customer complaint handling procedure. This is to generate a system of sharing complaints with all. Does it sound surprising? Well, here, sharing complaints with all refers to sharing the complaints and the reasons of complaints with all the employees involved in service transaction. The organization should develop a system through which the received complaint should log into the service organizational system and reach up to all concerned staff and all concerned authorities. This is important so that no complaint goes unattended and each complaint may leave something to learn from, thereby enhancing the service quality for all. Now, students, we move ahead to the next step, that is, communicate to the service personnel. The complaint receipt system should be clearly communicated to all and understood by the service personnel in totality. This works in two ways. Firstly, the service personnel becomes alert that the quality of the services should be maintained as per the organizational standards. And secondly, they should be clear about the complaint handling mechanism for any future event of a complaint that they encounter. Having shared and communicated, the organization now needs to train the service personnel in receiving and handling the complaints. The service personnel should be trained in accepting and confronting the complaining customers and also managing the situation in front of very loud and angry consumers. The personnel should be given confidence and training in courtesy managing while accepting any complaint. Facing an angry and complaining consumer could be stressful. Therefore, the service staff should be well trained to manage the situation by keeping calm yet proactive in receiving the complaint. Now, students, what do you think shall be the last step? Well, it would be fixing the authority for handling the complaint. The top management must identify the positions or persons in the service organizational hierarchy to handle the received complaint. The service staff should be well aware as to who should be approached to satisfy a complaining consumer. This person should not only have the authority to resolve the grievance, but also should do it as a priority. A complaining consumer should not be made to wait or go unattended, as rather this may lead to aggravation of his complaint. Thus, the service organization need to design and implement a well thought out plan for the receipt and management of a consumer complaint with a very courteous and positive attitude. This plan is as important as a marketing strategy or a finance plan. Now we come to the ways or mannerism of handling these consumer complaints in the services marketing context. Well, the first and the foremost thing to be done is to thank a consumer for complaining. You might be surprised, but one of the most courteous methods of responding to a complaint is to actually thank the consumer for coming up and complaining to the desk. This is true as this complaint acts as a feedback to enhance the quality of the services. In fact, the consumer would be spending time to share his experience, which may provide a first-hand insight into the service delivery of the organization and may highlight the gray areas which may require immediate attention or improvement of the company. What next? Absolutely apologizing for the inconvenience caused. Now, here, politeness is when the service personnel says sorry to the consumer for the occurrence of any service failure or any problem. Please remember, apologizing does not mean that the service personnel is accepting the blame for any inconvenience. This only means that the employee is being polite and courteous and sharing the concern of the complaining consumer. Another way of handling a complaint is by taking an empathetic approach to the complaint. Many a times, the service staff is trained to take an empathetic approach towards the handling of the complaint by the consumer. Through this approach, the staff is not expected to answer in any programmed way. Rather, he is given the flexibility to manage the situation by putting himself in the place of the complaining consumer and then look for a situation. Through this approach, the staff is not expected to answer in any programmed way. Rather, he is given the flexibility to manage the situation by putting himself in the place of the complaining consumer and then look for a solution. Since the service personnel is in a better position to understand the way in which the services are produced and delivered, he would be in a better position to find and recommend a solution to the consumers if he can consider himself as a consumer. Getting facts first is one of the most important mannerisms of handling complaints effectively. For a service personnel facing a complaining consumer, it is important to explore and collect the facts concerning the complaint first, and then look for a solution to be offered to the consumer. The consumer would be sharing his perception about the service inconvenience. However, the extent of compensation to be offered to the complaining consumer shall depend upon the facts related to the reasons for the dissatisfaction. Also, to the extent of discrepancy in service quality and service delivery. If a manager spends time in getting the facts first and then offering a compensation, this time bought by the service personnel, this shall be very useful in calming down an otherwise loud consumer. One of the most important and effective manner of handling a complaint is, of course, to correct the mistake. Having heard the complaining consumer and gathered the necessary and relevant details related to the complaint, it is important to set the problem right. Whatever the mistakes, it should be sought to be set right by the service personnel handling the complaint at the very first instance. Very often, a free service or a gift is the commonly used tactics of pleasing any angry consumer. However, this method should be used with caution. There may be a habitually complaining consumer. While a local service provider may be able to identify such consumers, large service organizations may not be able to identify such consumers. Therefore, the priority should be to correct the mistake first and, if need be, please the consumer with a free gift. Let's elaborate on this point. Let's assume that there is a consumer who is dissatisfied with the taste or hygiene of a food item at a restaurant. If the consumer is complaining, one of the easiest methods to satisfy him is to replace his dish free of cost. And, if needed, offer him another dish free, or maybe even offer him to have his complete meal off, depending upon the situation and the seriousness of a complaint. In another situation, let's assume a telecom subscriber is complaining to a service center executive on phone about the faulty deduction of cash from his prepaid SIM card. In such a complaint, the executive, after having gathered all the facts, may offer to revert the deducted balance and end the conversation. He may not proceed ahead to offer any further free service or any further free gift. Thus, the personnel handling the complaint will be better able to decide whether or not to offer a gift depending upon the circumstances in which the complaint is made and the nature and seriousness of the complaint. The executive handling the complaint should be able to quickly judge what the consumer feels is the right way of solving his complaint. What may look right to the executive may not be perceived as right by the consumer. Thus, while offering a solution to the complaint, it is important to understand the expected solution from the consumer's point of view. Last but not the least is learning from the complaint. As mentioned earlier, each complaint received is an opportunity to learn and improve the service quality. Whatever be the solution offered to satisfy the complaining consumer, it is henceforth important to ensure that the same reason for a complaint may not occur again. This may require training of the staff, modification in the existing service delivery procedure, upgrading of the service production and delivery system, or even improvement in the support system. So students, let us now summarize what we have learned in this module. To begin with, firstly, a complaint is an expression of dissatisfaction or displeasure with the way services are delivered. These are matched against the promises made by the service provider at the time of sale of these services. It is very important to satisfy a complaining consumer as his complaints provide an insight into the service delivery system, which ultimately facilitates the improvement of the overall service performance. Further, it is important to please such a consumers, as otherwise he may create a lot of negative word of mouth for the service organization, not buying the service himself and not speaking good about the service to others. It is necessary for organizations to have a well-planned formal complaint handling procedure in place, where all the employees are trained to, first of all, accept and receive the complaints in the most courteous manner and then manage the same. Some formal authority is vested with the person entrusted with the responsibility of handling complaints for taking any decision, and sometimes on-the-spot decisions, to rectify the complaint and also to ensure to please the consumer that he leaves the premises of the company with a positive attitude. Complaints should be seen as a learning opportunity in enhancing the overall service quality of a service provider. Thank you.